Welcome to Bottle Rocket with Elena Sucheva, your top hockey podcast. Welcome back to Bottle Rocket, the Thinking Fans Puck podcast. I'm Elena, joined as always by Maeve, Teabag. And today we've got a really special guest, someone who has been preserving hockey history, one rare clip at a time. Since 1987, he's tracked down incredibly rare hockey footage, often material that players and their families have never even seen before. He shared these pieces absolutely free, helping more than 120 families reconnect with moments they thought were lost forever. Our special guest has brought us exclusive, never before seen footage from his archives. Please welcome Len Gould.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this.
We're so excited to have you.
Man, it's so nice to see you again.
I want to say right now, without any equivocation, there should be a place in the Hockey Hall of Fame for you, for what you do, for people who do very special things away from the ice, not necessarily. And so far away, the Hall of Famer, I'm beyond, I don't really find myself beyond words, but I can't say enough good things about you. So this is like one of the most special people I've ever met in hockey, and I've been in hockey since I think Woodward Wilson was the president, somebody like that.
Oh, it's very humbling. Thank you kindly, Stan. I mean, that's wow. I feel like I can just hang up right now, and it's been a good day.
Well, let's get serious about this. What got you into this unique business that you're in? Well, it's not a business. It's a philanthropy. It's a puck philanthropy. Getting all these fantastic archives, finding them, and then finding the hockey families that are just crazy happy to get them. How did this start?
You know, I started like a lot of people, just as a collector. And, you know, back in the middle 80s, I would look in the back of the hockey news, and it was right away for hockey fight tapes or classic games. And for me, this was super exciting on VHS and getting, you know, at the time, what were more recent memories. And over the years, I developed a network of just people I knew who were similar, who just collected and traded with one another. And at some point along the way, I met another of your friends, a gentleman by the name of Paul Patsko, who had heard about my collection and actually asked me for some footage for, I believe it was Ron Ellis of the Leafs. And I gave him the footage, and he gave it to Ron, and I got this nice note back, and it was like I could almost see the light bulb going off over my head. It just made me feel really good. And so Paul would start hooking me up with various players here and there, and like anything else in life, a network sort of developed, and people would recommend me to other people, whether that's, you know, Craig at the Hockey Hall of Fame, the Doc Seaman Center. People would write in saying, hey, you know, my uncle played in the 30s or 40s, and we have nothing of this guy. Do you have anything? And they flip it to me. So it's become like a snowball over time where the sort of concept of giving back to these guys became what it is. You know, the other question is, where does it all come from, right? And the answer is from everybody. So I hock everybody, Stan. Archives, museums, TV stations, garage sales, people who have reels in the bottom of a closet or a basement that they consider essentially garbage or junk. And to me, it's gold. So I'm a big aggregator. And that's how it happens. It's a lot of years of that happening over and over.
let's go to a life exhibit. I know that Johnny Wilson's daughter was touched, to say the least. Tell us a story about Johnny Wilson's daughter, who's a good friend of mine and a wonderful writer. Go ahead.
Well, the whole family, they're wonderful people. And this one came, I believe this one came through Paul as well, where she reached out to him and had heard through the grapevine that there was this great interview that she did with Ward Cornell in the late 60s on Hockey Night, where Johnny was talking about adopting a child. And this ended up being her. And so not only was it incredibly, a rare moment to be able to hear her father's voice at the peak of his career, at the peak of his fame, but to hear him not talking about the goal scored or the shot blocked, but to talk about essentially her, you can't put a price on a moment like that. And there were a lot of tears involved with that one.
You were in touch with Alex Shibicky's son, if I'm not mistaken. How did that one come about? I mean, he was back in the on the 1940 Cup winning team, and how did you meet him, and what did you get for him?
So a gentleman another common friend of ours, Ken Matucci, who used to work at MSG Network, received a call from Alex Jr. And Alex Jr. is quite a bit older than myself at this point. And he asked if there was any footage, because other than a few brief seconds in some compilation highlight videos, Tradition on Ice, there really wasn't anything. Certainly nothing that put Alex's career in perspective as a real, true scoring winger. A lot of people say the originator of the slap shot. And I found at an upstate New York, in New City, New York, Rockland County, I found a 16 millimeter film reel. It cost me $5 to buy and then cost me $325 to develop. And believe it or not, it's the end of the game. It's 1940 playoffs where they're trying to get to the finals. And it's a 2-1 game with time running out in the old garden, and Shibicky ices it with the 3-1 goal. And I don't know who took this footage, but it's natural sound. You literally see the old garden explode, and the programs come raining down from the top bowl. And again, it's a very emotional piece. It's a piece of history that essentially was lost. It just didn't exist anymore. And now it'll exist forever.
So, Len, when you first started in 1987, did you ever imagine that would become such a big, meaningful part of your life?
No way. No way. I was a fan who wanted to meet these guys, and I was looking for a reason to meet these guys. But no, I never in a million years would have thought it's turned into what it's turned into now.
And what was the moment when you realized, wow, this is bigger than just collecting footage?
Honestly, there's a lot of them. When you see it in the family's eyes, or you hear it in their reactions, you're giving people something that not only is so incredibly precious or meaningful, but they weren't aware that they weren't aware that it existed. I'm not helping guys from the 90s or the 2000s. Those guys don't need my help. But once you get back to the 80s and 70s and forget it on backwards, a lot of these guys, there's nothing of Grandpa doing what he did in the NHL, and so you bring them these memories and you give them to them. And, I have no requests. My request list is one item long, and it's just, please don't put it on YouTube.
What is your you consider your most significant find, like the wow moment that you just couldn't believe that you found this?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, there's a lot of them. If I gave you my most meaningful two things, they couldn't be more opposite ends of the spectrum. One of them is a 1928. Again, it's natural sound, and it's the Pittsburgh Pirates playing the New York Americans. And it runs about 45 seconds. It's the only known footage of the Pirates that exists, period. And that was a find. That was a chasing up. I'm the only Floridian, by the way, that I believe has been to a Regina Pats game in February. And I found that up there in Regina at a book thrift store. It just had hockey on it. So that was meaningful. And then I have, I grew up kind of liking the nuttier side of the game. Yeah, and I have some North American Hockey League footage that you kind of have to see it to believe that this stuff was allowed to happen on the ice. It was pretty violent stuff. But again, it's material that people don't know. They don't even know it exists.
And what's the hardest part of what you do? The researching, the restoring, or the tracking down people, or the emotional weight?
Oh boy, that's another good question, Elena. It's an expensive hobby. It's not cheap. I thank my wife for her support. She's got a lot of passion for this game, and she vibes on this as much as I do when people are happy. I guess the biggest disappointment is when people aren't as excited as I am.
And do you ever get the players who are surprised to learn any footage of their career even exists?
Yeah, that happens all the time. And most people are very excited, by the way. So we just found footage for the two Brunito brothers from the 40s Wings, Eddie and Mud Brunito. And the grandson, Tyler, reached out. Is there anything? And again, I found a nice interview that Mud did with Foster Hewitt on Hockey Night, talking about him and Eddie and how they were, using flat sticks. And boy, if we could curve our sticks, it would be amazing. And so that kind of stuff is what keeps me sane. I got a very stressful real job, so this stuff it flushes me with endorphins.
I had one request from a guy who never thought anything would show up. The first year of the Islanders was 72-73. It was one of the worst teams of all time. In fact, a buddy of mine did a book called The Hapless Islanders. And the defenseman on that team, his name was Bill Mikkelson. I happened to come in contact with him because my granddaughter, my 16-year-old granddaughter, is a hockey player. And Bill's daughter was very champion Canadian on women's team hockey. So we were talking that way. And I mentioned to Bill about Len, and he got all excited. I said, well, please don't get yourself excited because this is 72, 73. And I don't even know whether Len even knows about this. So anyhow, I got in touch with Len on behalf of Bill, and you tell the gang what happened.
This was one of the hard ones. The early 70s they're a nightmare for people who collect footage because it was the transition from film to videotapes, and videotapes, they were new. It was such an expensive way of recording games that the networks they'd finish recording the game Friday night, and Saturday they'd record over it. And they would record that tape until it died, and then they would toss it in the trash. So there's really a black hole in the early 70s. And Bill, I'll admit, I wasn't familiar with Bill's name. And when Stan reached out to me, but I learned a lot about Bill. Turns out Bill holds a few records. I don't know if he's super psyched about them for most -5 games in a career. But the good news is I found one of those -5 games. It happened in the Boston Garden. And I called Bill and I said, I have this footage here, but I'm leery about sending it to you because the last thing I would ever want is for somebody to feel bad about getting. And he'd forget it. He's like, you kidding? I'm showing my grandkids Bobby Orr running around me. And look, there's Wayne Cashman and Espo. And it was a nice piece. And he couldn't be more grateful. He's a gem of a guy.
You play in beer league as well, right?
Yes. I'm a pretty terrible left winger on a pretty terrible team in the bottom rung of Florida Beer League.
How does your beer league team react to the fact that their left winger is basically hockey's Indiana Jones?
They're very cool about it. It's a good bunch of guys. We've been together a long, long time. It's going to be 18 years soon. So they like the stories. They don't know a lot of the guys that I'm helping. The names don't resonate as much as it will with the three of you or the folks watching this podcast probably. But couldn't get more support. That's for sure. Support.
I want to know something that bothers me about historic footage. The Rangers went to the Stanley Cup final in 1950. They went to Game 7, and there's been, I think, about 20 guys out of the 15 on that team hit the goalpost in the first overtime. First, I heard it was Don Rawley, then it was this guy, and then it was that guy. Do you have any footage? Well, let me put it this way. Do you have footage of the goal scorer was in overtime, and the second overtime was Pete Babando of the Red Wings. And I've never seen the actual. They did a recreation of that, but I've never seen the actual thing. And what's fascinating about this whole thing was here the Rangers were on the lip of winning the Stanley Cup, the second overtime, and the face-off was in deep Rangers zone. And the guy who was supposed to take the faceoff was Edgar LaPrade. And the goalie, Charlie Rayner, went to the coach, Len Patrick, and says, you better take Edgar off because he must be tired, and put in Buddy O'Connor, who's fresh. And of course, Len took the advice of Charlie Rayner, and he put Buddy O'Connor in, and Buddy O'Connor lost the faceoff. And Babando scored the goal. Charlie Rayner has said, and I have it down, he said, I'm the guy who caused that cup. I should have shut my mouth. So I'm wondering, my first question is, number one, is there any footage of any Ranger hitting the post, which would have been in the first overtime? And maybe more importantly, any footage of the face-off, the Bando's goal, because it was right off the face-off.
So there is footage of the game. It's all in bits and pieces on newsreels. Universal had a newsreel on the game. So did Path put out a newsreel. There's not a lot of action at all. The game-winning goal is not shown anywhere. I do have the recreation, and I could share the recreation with you. And ironically, the recreation is one of the first color shots of hockey in 1950. That's ridiculously early for color. But that's a real elusive. That's an elusive cup game. The only Game 7 double overtime game. I've had both the Red Wings and the Ranger organizations ask me about it.
And the other ironic part of it is that in the news reports of the game, whether it was Toronto, Detroit, or there's no mention of any Ranger hitting the goalpost, although everybody, In fact, I interviewed Pat Egan live on TV, went to his house. This is Pat Egan long after he retired. He was living with his son in New Jersey. And I asked him about that thing, and he claimed that he was part of the. He said, I took a shot, and it was a 2-on-1 break. I took a shot. It hit the post, came out, and I was about to put it in, and that Harry Lumley, the goalie, swatted it away just in time. It's a great story to repeat with about 20 guys who hit the goalpost or whatever.
So are you working on anything right now for somebody, or are you trying to track down any kind of footage at present?
Well, the tracking down part never stops. That's for me just going forward, just part of my DNA. In terms of current projects, yeah, I'm actually working with Nick Libbett's daughter. His 80th birthday is coming up. So put together a package of games. Paul helped me with a goal highlight film reel. And other than that, the big project I'm working on is for Sid Howe, no relation to Gordy, but also former Red Wing. Sid Howe's son and grandchildren, they also don't have a lot of footage. He retired in 1949. And I was able to pick up some film reels again that are out for developing on Stanley Cup Finals, one of which he scored a big goal in. And again, it's a hit or miss. It's rolling the dice. I'm waiting to see back from the transfer studio right now.
This is the 100th anniversary of the Rangers. And do you have any special Ranger find that you remember that you'd like to talk about? Because, in fact, there's going to be a celebration tomorrow night at the Garden playing the Red Wings. Do you have anything special from the Rangers?
Yes is the answer. Grew up a Ranger fan. My oldest son's middle name is Ranger, even though I'm down here 30 years now or whatnot. My favorite Ranger teams were when your favorite Islander teams were kicking the snot out of them for a year after year. Those were my guys. Ironically, I've helped out more Islanders to Rangers 10-1 easily. Wow. The Rangers that I've helped out are all 1960s and then backwards. Really haven't come across, haven't had the opportunity to cross paths with someone who's looked for my services.
Have you been in touch with Peter Stemkowski?
No, I have not.
Well, I'm going to hook you up with him.
Okay.
Because he scored a memorable goal, a playoff
Absolutely.
Goal against Tony Esposito. And Peter is around. And in fact, I hope to get Peter on the show in a few weeks or maybe a month or so, because he said he would come on. There is something I did want to ask you, a personal thing, and I'm not sure whether you were the guy who got the footage or whether it wound up with, it might have been somebody else actually. I was a great fan during World War II, watching the Ranger farm team, the Rovers, play against the Coast Guard Cutters. And I did more investigation about the Cutters because I knew one of the players, Mike Nardello. You don't have anything on the Cutters, do you?
Actually, before you moved to Israel, when I curated your collection, there was the Rovers Cutters footage in there. And I don't know if my memory is going to serve me correctly or not, but I'm almost positive Johnny Mariucci was on that team.
Absolutely. It was Mariucci on a breakaway.
Yes.
And what was interesting about it, it proved something that I told people many, many times, and they thought I was pulling their leg. The Rover goalie who got beaten by Mariucci was Jack McGill. And Jack McGill was the only goalie in the history of hockey that I ever heard. He played every game with a towel around his neck. And I saw him play also. But when I got that footage, it was too fast. I don't know whether it was ever slowed down. And
it has been slowed down, and I could bounce that over to you if you'd like to see it again.
Oh, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see
100%.
it. 100%. I'd love to see it.
So, Len, is there a specific player or family that you were hoping to find footage of but haven't been able to yet?
No, there have been some very difficult families, but I haven't found myself striking out yet. I feel like I should knock wood as I say that. Bob Gassoff's family was very tough. He only played in the middle 70s when nothing was saved, and he played at a small market in St. Louis. But the memorial tape that the league put together after he passed away turned out Bob Jr. It's just in the bottom of a closet somewhere. It's some weird format that, it was a videotape this big. So we ended up transferring that. So I didn't really find it, but the act of reaching out and trying to help sort of led to, again, new memories there. That was a great piece.
You mentioned the Pittsburgh Pirates earlier. Do you have any footage of any of the other teams that aren't around anymore, like New York Americans, Montreal Maroons, Detroit Cougars?
So Cougars, no. The only thing that exists is what I would say a common newsreel. It's out on YouTube right now. The Americans, absolutely. My wife, who's from Brooklyn, would help me find various. There was lots of stuff saved by the generations before us of film reels. So not only do I have Americans footage, but I've got some really cool footage of Ford Frick down on the ice with the big microphone that comes on the 100-foot wire, the big circle microphone. And he's congratulating Ching Johnson, who's about to retire. Ching only played the home games that last year for the Americans, and he gave him a nice watch. And you literally hear the emotion in the voice. And that's middle 30s, middle to late 30s, that footage.
How about when they were the Brooklyn Americans in the last year, 41, 42? Do you have any of that?
Off the top of my head, I would say, yeah, I probably do. If something was shot, I've got it.
Anything of Maple Leafs? Any footage?
Yeah, I've got a lot of Leafs footage. I've helped a lot of Leaf players. Simply, again, I go back to Paul Patsku, who, he's in Toronto, and he's super connected with the Leafs alumni. So I've helped out guys who played, 5 games up to, I'm trying to think, Frank Mahovlich. We got him the only hat trick that he scored for Maple Leaf Gardens. He had one of those. So, yes, Leafs, there's lots and lots of stuff on the Leafs out there. That's for sure.
With something so meaningful that you do, I imagine you must have experienced some unexpected reactions. Have you ever had a negative or difficult response with sharing that footage?
Elena, yes is the answer. And what I would tell you is that the hockey players, they're like any other slice of life. If you put 15 people in a room, 5 people are going to be super impressed, 5 people will be interested, and 5 people are going to have no interest at all. So I've dug up footage that I thought was super meaningful. I locally down here, Randy Moeller is a broadcaster he's the color guy on TV for the Panther games. And somehow I got footage of the Western Hockey League pre-draft dinner. And it's him and it's his brother the day before the draft. And I literally put the footage in his hand. He was like, yeah, okay, thanks. That was that. And again, I'm not saying that's bad or anything. It's just whatever. Some people find it meaningful and some people don't.
How about the World Hockey Association? Did you ever do anything? Yeah, tell us about it.
Absolutely. Earlier we were talking about some of the most meaningful moments. Well, arguably the most meaningful was Jerry Rollins. So Jerry Rollins was a I would say tough guy, but tough guy squared or cubed in the WHA. Came out of the Western Hockey League and really tore it up for the Toros, the Roadrunners, and very tough guy. And his father, former New York Ranger and other team, goaltender Al Rollins, the Hart Trophy winner, Vezina Trophy winner. And Jerry reached out to me to see if I could find something on his dad. And of course, I looked through my WHA stuff and I found this great, again, I'm kind of a fan of the nuttier stuff of the 70s. And I found this great brawl with the Toros in Quebec, where Jerry's ripping some guy's jersey off and then he stomps on it a few times to chop it up. And then he flings it into the crowd. And I'm talking to Jerry, and the linesman's barely holding on, and that's Pat DiPuzzo. And Jerry's like, "Oh my God, I live near Pat DiPuzzo now. I got to call him and apologize." 40 years later, I got to call him and apologize after seeing this. But for his dad in the middle 50s, Canada had a show coast to coast. It ran for 3 years called Hockey Close Up. And Hockey Close Up would get a current player and a former player and just ask about what's going on off the ice. It was sort of the very first behind the scenes type stuff, footage wise, that was happening. And part of this, again, is Al Rollins sitting at a desk talking about, his soon to be child, his young child, Jerry, and how meaningful this is and how it puts his career in perspective. And again, it was so topical. So I sent this off to Jerry. And I don't know, like a week later, I get a photograph in the mail, and it's a Phoenix Roadrunner like press photo on it. And you know what? That's probably actually what lit the fuse when you asked me earlier, Elaine. That's probably what lit the fuse, because the feeling was you just want more of that feeling.
If you had unlimited time and resources, what historical hockey footage would you be hunting for right now?
There are many archives that I know about who, how can I say this nicely, really don't want to deal with me. They see me as a fan trying to get footage that somebody else owns, and it gets messy. Thankfully, my batting average is probably 7 out of 10. But unfortunately, I know of archives throughout North America that actually are sitting on virgin material that is slowly deteriorating. And that's the problem with all of this stuff, is that year by year it becomes, there's degradation that can't be overcome. So whether it's a videotape from 1999 or it's a film from 1929 or it's something in between, it's slowly becoming nothing. The color's going, the sound is going, the detail is going. And all I'm looking for is permission to transfer it, so that they can have a permanent piece of their own archive. And some guys they don't want to hear it. So, but that's okay. That's okay. I probably couldn't afford it if everybody said yes.
I want to get back to Jerry Rollins and Al Rollins, because I was in touch with Jerry quite a bit. I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you guys, but Al Rollins was one of my personal favorites. I actually saw Al Rollins playing for the New York Rovers.
Wow.
In 1942. And I remember, typically New York, we didn't call him Al Rollins, we called him Allie Rollins, which was a definite Brooklyn touch, Allie Rollins. And then, of course, he wound up winning the Stanley Cup with Turk Broder in '51 and the Vezina. And he was one of my eternal idols. Now, what happened was, when at the tail end of his career, when the Rangers were not doing so well. He wound up with that was the year that America, Team USA, won the gold in Squaw Valley. And the whole deal was, well, these are American heroes. And Rollins, who I had actually had dinner with him and a friend of mine, and was loving the way he was playing wonderful goal for this lousy Ranger team. But Jack McCartan was the goalie that was on the gold medal team, and the Rangers immediately signed McCartan, brought him back to New York, and that was the end of Al as a Ranger. But I was wondering if, would you have any footage of Al playing goal for the Rangers? Just curious.
Absolutely, plenty.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I just want to confirm that he was obviously very biased in favor of this guy because what he did for the Leafs, and I saw him in '42, and he was just playing, so good for this forlorn team, and then all of a sudden this guy comes in. Nothing against Jack McCartan because he came in, and that would be a very interesting one. Jack McCartan plays his first game for the Rangers off the Olympics. And then I was at that game, and in the first minute of the game, Gordie Howe got a breakaway, and McCartan stoned him.
Huh.
That should be in the Rangers with their 100th anniversary. Which I'm so happy to hear about. You were close to Jerry Rollins, and of course Al, one of my favorites.
So actually, a recent piece of Al Rollins footage that surfaced. This is maybe a year or so ago. But it's the presenting of the Vezina Trophy to Al. And the way they would do it back in the day when you won the award, you found out opening night the next season. So they literally, you see the president of the league walk out and, hey, Al, come over here. Here's the Vezina. And then they started the game. First game.
I would be surprised if I would think the Blackhawks, if the Blackhawks historian, I think he's still there, Bob Verdi, he was a colleague of mine, they would want, talking about Rollins, the Blackhawks were so terrible for so many years, and then the Red Wings dumped their former captain, Sid Abel, and he goes to Chicago. That was I guess that was 52, 53. And what happens is that Sid Abel goes to Chicago as a player coach. And Al Rollins winds up from Toronto in Chicago. And this team that never made the playoffs with Sid Abel as the player coach and Al Rollins in goal, and they made the playoffs. And they almost won the first round. But boy, that would be some great stuff for Chicago. But I'm not here for Chicago. But I just love that guy.
I'll send some Al stuff your way.
One of my favorite photographs of all time, and Maeve will confirm this for you, is the famous photograph of Rocket Richard and Sugar Jim Henry shaking hands. And they're both bloody and bandaged and battered. And is there footage of that game?
There's footage of the game in a highlight form. There's no footage of that. I wish there was footage of that handshake happening. That would be Holy Grail type material to find that. I love that picture as well.
Do you have any footage of Vladislav Tretiak by any chance? Maybe with Gretzky?
Actually, plenty. In the middle 70s, there was a gentleman named Al Stewart, and Al Stewart recorded everything. And I mean everything. He went around every time a team came in to play, and he was based in Toronto. Every time a team came in, he would do headshots of every single guy on the team, the guy warming up, every single guy with a shift or two. And part of that were the Russian teams that would come over because they were often in and around where Al was. So Absolutely. I have pre 72 Summit Series Tretiak footage.
I would love to see that. Oh my
And
goodness. My mom is a huge fan of Tretiak as well.
I'm almost positive that he did a video with Gretzky in the 70s or a
Yes.
film.
So yeah, I would love to see the footage if there's any videos.
It's definitely there. It's there. I don't know how much of it's there, but it is there.
That's incredible. That would be really rare as well, because it's much more difficult to trace back down in Russia, right? For you, I would guess.
It is. I have two Russian comrades who are essentially copies of myself, and we help each other. So good people. Good people.
I got another selfish request. As I've told people through my lifetime, I never rooted harder, more intensely, more passionately for any team but the Maple Leafs starting in 46, 47. I'm living in Brooklyn, mind you. And when they won the cup in game 6 over the Canadians, I went berserk. And of course, I wanted to see something. And this is what happened. About 2 days after the game, I happened to be in Times Square. And in those days, there were two newsreel theaters. All they showed was newsreels of everything. And I walked past this one. It was on Broadway, about 46th Street, and they were showing, and they had a picture of the Maple Leafs, I guess, celebrating. And I went in to watch, and I went right through the whole thing, and they never showed it. They never showed it. I stayed a second time, and they never showed it. And I don't know what the heck happened to it. But I'm just wondering. That was final game, 47, the final game. And what happened was, and you can look in one of the historic books, 2 seconds before the final buzzer, the most famous Toronto hockey photographer, Nat Turovsky, what he did was before the game was over, 2 seconds, 3 seconds left, he jumped over the boards and he took a picture of the Leaf bench as the buzzer went, with the guys flying over. And of course, one of my heroes, Bill Ezenicki, was right in the middle of the picture. And I was just wondering, that game, boy, I don't know, whatever, was there anything with that cup-winning game in 47?
Off the top of my head, there is a newsreel.
I just got goosebumps when Stan is describing this moment as if I'm there.
Well, I'll tell you, I can never stop talking about my love affair with that Leaf team because it was so romantic. I can tell you right now. Number 1 was Turk Broder. Number 2 was Jimmy Thompson. Number 3 was Gus Morrison. Number 4 was Harry Watson. Number 5 became Bill Barilko. They retired 6. 7 was Max Bentley. 8 was Joe Kluke. 9 was Tita Kennedy. 10 before he retired was Sil Apps. Then he retired his number. 11 was Howie Meeker. 12 was Bill Ezenicki. There was no 13. 14 was Vic Lynn. And that's enough. You don't have to near anymore. That's how I love that team. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Turk Broda was he your favorite goalie of all time?
Every Maple Leaf was my favorite at that time. And Turk was a great character. The baseball equivalent of Turk Broda was Yogi Berra. 20 guys, didn't look like they played their position because they were a little fat or whatever, and always funny. And I never, it's the first time I ever mentioned this, but Turk was the Yogi Berra of hockey, Turk Broda. But my favorite, I had a lot of favorites, like Bill Ezenicki. I would love to see a picture of Bill Ezenicki doling out one of his great body checks. And what about the Bill Barilko goal, the winning goal in 51? It's another gem.
I saw a picture of Turk Broda before a game, and he was sleeping. They said he had the perfect perfect attitude for a goalie because he just was so relaxed. Where Glenn Hall was so intense and threw up before every game. Turk Broder had a nap.
The latter day Turk Broder was Marty Brodeur. Game 7 of the 2003 Stanley Cup Final, and everybody's a nervous wreck. And now before the goaltenders would never do interviews the day of a game, let alone a Game 7. And an hour before the game, a guy from CBC TV is doing an interview with Marty Brodeur an hour before the game. For all he cared, it was like a beer league game. He was absolutely imperturbable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you get guys that wouldn't even think of talking to the press within 24 hours of a game, and Marty Brodeur's doing interviews 1 hour before Game 7. He really puts everybody else to shame with that, because there's no need to be so that.
Yeah, goalies carry so much pressure. T-Bag, with your goalie background, were you a pregame napper or throw up in the room type?
Yeah, I always had a nap in the afternoon of a game, and then my attitude was that I'm gonna do what I do. I'm not. Like I say, I've said this before. I was born with this confidence, this self-confidence. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why I have it, but I know exactly what I'm about, what I'm capable of, what I'm not capable of. And, I have my feet firmly planted on the ground, and it just is, and I just accept it. So when I was playing, people will ask me, you're playing a championship game. Are you nervous? No, I'm not nervous. I'm excited. I'm a little kid. I can't wait to get on the ice, so, I don't know where the mindset comes from, but that's just the way I always was.
Absolute opposite. I'll never forgive him for this. After a Penguins victory, Tom Barrasso wouldn't talk to us, for whatever reason. And how can you not after a big Stanley Cup victory? But it's just like Len said. You get a whole bunch of people, and they're going to be good guys. You're going to be bad guys. You're going to be guys in between, and that's the way it is. But that was a low point I felt in terms of a celebration. Really tough.
Mhm.
Very tough.
Well, what I heard about Tom Barrasso was that he was arrogant beyond belief, and so that there are athletes, and I'll say like Ricky Henderson and Jose Canseco, others, that think that because they're great athletes, that makes them great people. And my daughter is a very talented singer, and so I tell her, no matter where this takes you or how famous you become, it does not make you better than anybody else. You stay humble. And being great at something doesn't make you a great person. And that's the mistake that a lot of these people make.
Well, it's an interesting point, and of course, speaking about great people, I have to say, we're the hockey community, particularly in New York, is in mourning now because the longtime Ranger and actually all NHL writer Larry Brooks passed away Thursday. Larry, I was there when Larry broke in and followed his career. He was also for a while PR guy for the New Jersey Devils during the administration when the Schoenfeld episode had in Yellow Sunday. And Larry, he was actually covering up until the beginning of training camp and into training camp. And he was covering the Yankee World Playoff Series. And next thing you know, there was a communique from the Post that if you don't see Larry's byline, he's ill. And then we didn't realize how fast it would go. So to give points for Larry, he was a great influence on the New York hockey scene, and the condolences have been coming in from British Columbia across Canada through America, and particularly one guy who was very close to Larry, Henrik Lundqvist. So I just want to mention something that Larry will be missed for his diligence, his reporting, and making a lot of Ranger fans happy over decades. Also,
Yeah,
Islanders during the covered the Islanders during the great run of the dynasty, and so he basically was covering all three teams. But the last few years, he was the Ranger guy for the Post.
yeah. His interactions with John Tortorella are legendary. This him and Tortorella going at it during the media scrum. I mean, I don't think I've ever laughed so hard. It's like,
Well,
so,
from a certain viewpoint, it was hilarious if you weren't involved. I had my own fencing matches, verbal fencing matches with Tortorella, and he could be very intimidating, particularly during his Ranger years. He was very and also I remember when we were doing the Devils Tampa Bay series, and we went down to do interviews post game, and we got yelled at and screamed at because we walked across the dressing room floor and they had the logo on the floor. What was I supposed to do? Fly over it? I mean, what kind of crazy stuff was that? But he had a drill sergeant air about him, and if you didn't go back at him, you could be being intimidated. Intimidated. He was probably he was as I would say as intimidating as maybe Phil Watson in his Ranger coaching days in the 50s, and that darling boy from Toronto, Punch Imlach. Of course, I happen to like Punch, but he was tough. Of course, Punch was tougher on his players than he was. Peter Simkowski was on that last team, and I'm dying to get Pete. I want Peter to be on the show because Peter was rookie on the '67 team, which had no business winning the Stanley Cup. And the interesting thing was that all the old guys on the team loved Punch, guys like Ed Kelly and George Armstrong and Alan Stanley, and the young guys hated him. And of course, Peter was one of the young guys, and so we'll have that. We'll have a lot of fun with Peter. Peter's a very funny guy, great guy, one of the best.
Yeah, there was incident. I don't know if it was on the road or in Vancouver, but Tony Gallagher, who was a famous sports writer from these parts, there was a logo on the floor, and he walked over, and somebody started yelling at him. He said, "Well, if you don't want me walking on it, why is it on the floor?" so he just kept walking on it just to piss them off.
T-Bag, one of the teams solved it this year, and I think it's either the Islanders or the Devils. They took the logo and they put it on the ceiling.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, perfect solution.
I mean, really.
So,
I'm gonna have one. I got to throw one more at you, and I know this is pretty selfish, but about we were talking about the great Rocket and that great scene with Sugar Jim Henry, and that was the follow-up of one of the greatest goals I've ever scored in playoffs by the Rocket. But I want to ask you, to me, the greatest body-checking forward of all time. Nobody in second place was Wild Bill Ezzenicki, number 12. Do you have any footage of Ezzy?
I do have some footage of Ezzy. So beginning in 49 and going through 54 or 55, the Leafs would do a highlight film to sort of recap the season, where they would put on a card, Ezzenicki hits so-and-so, and then they'd show it, and this one scores a goal, and absolutely will I send you some Ezzy footage.
So I'm going to tell you an Ezzy story.
Yeah.
We all know that, you heard me say, greatest body checker of all time, and in one of the great books called The Leafs in Winter, the guy did an oral history and he explained his technique for body checking. So now, one of my all-time heroes, Wild Bill Ezzenicki, at the twilight of the Rangers bring him up for the second part of the 54-55 season when I was working for the team. And of course, here's my idol, Bill Ezzenicki. and I had a couple of nice chats with him. In fact, I told him I listed his body checks as a jolt, a thump, and a whomp in that order. The jolt is not too bad. The thump is pretty bad, and the whomp, you knock the guy's head off or whatever. So this is the story. So now they're playing the Canadians, and of course, as he was in his Leafs prime, he was always tormenting the Rocket, and not to mention any other opponent he could. So I'm at ice level watching this, and the Rocket is coming out of his end. Now, this was 54, 55, so the Rocket was still in his prime. Rocket is coming out from his end on the right side, and he starts cutting to center from right, moving left towards center. Now, simultaneously, Zanicki is coming along his right, and he's suddenly cutting to center. So in my mind, I'm thinking, Fischler, you're going to see the death of Rocket Richard, because the way as he was moving, and that was one of his set plays, cutting from right to center and whacking the guy like Scott Stevens once did to Eric Lindros and his career. So anyhow, I'm watching this thing. I'm kind of terrified because on the one hand, I love Ezzy, and he's with our Rangers. On the other hand, the Rocket is the Rocket. And what happened was they're coming to center, and it's about to happen. And unlike the Rocket picked up his radar in the last second, and it was like he missed him by a millimeter, and the Rocket lived to finish the game. And as he never connected, but it had great potential. I'll never forget that scene. That guy was he was on the first line. This guy, the greatest body checker, was on right wing with Sillaps, one of the greatest Maple Leafs of all time, and on left wing, Harry Watson.
So one last question for me, Len, since looks like we're running out of time here. Have you thought about writing a book about your exploits and your collecting and this uncovering of archival footage?
Boy, that's a good question. I have. I'm just a little leery of sharing because all the emotion is, 50% of it's mine, but the other half of it are all of these other families. And I don't really know if everyone's comfortable with everything being out there. I think it would be a nice capstone at some point, but I'm not ready for that one just yet. Got a bunch more folks who still got to help make it a fatter book.
I'm going to ask you my last question, and that is, you have to admit, I think you already admitted it, that you're a hockey fan. You already admitted without any hesitation, but you could have, that you're a Ranger fan. Are you still a Ranger fan?
No, it's sort of a long story, Stan, but my Ranger fandom transferred away from the Rangers when they signed Eric Lindros. That's when I officially jumped into the Panther fandom with both feet.
So you're a Panther fan?
Now I am, yes.
Okay, so here's the attached question. What's your greatest thrill, your single greatest thrill as a Panther fan?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's another great question. Honestly, so I have this little picture here behind me. And that's Tanner Glass, who came up through the Panthers and then played for Vancouver, Winnipeg, the Rangers, on and on. We were at a game, my son and I, and my son had his Tanner Glass jersey with Tanner. He was there for his first goal. And this guy was so kind and so nice to my son that, it was like someone asked me if I was paying him. And that even though he was a Winnipeg Jet at the time, it happened in the bowels of the Panther Arena, and I'll never forget that moment. That was just a great, great moment.
It's a good one.
Those hockey players are the best.
I don't know whether you're cutting off or not, Elena, but you have to give me the cue for the joke, the end of the.
Absolutely, absolutely. Go for it.
Oh, are you giving me the cue?
Yes.
Okay, so I have to give you the prelude. I'm a great collector. I shouldn't say great. I'm a collector of jokes. I love jokes. Every morning before I do my prayers, I read a joke. I read a joke, and I'm into all kinds of comedy from going back to the Borscht Belt and even before that. But this joke has a label, and the label is this is the world's worst. I'm sorry, I take it. This is the world's best bad joke. You got that? This is the world's best bad joke. And it's unique because it's the only joke that my wife Shirley ever could tell in our long years of marriage. Shirley was not an innate joke teller, but this is the joke that she would tell. So you got that? It's the best of the bad jokes of all time. And it may not even be funny, except I love it. So here it goes. Okay. During World War II, the American Marines made their first significant invasion of the island of Guadalcanal in the South Pacific. It was a major, major invasion, which turned out to be one of the turning points of the war. And in the invasion, the Marines, as they were moving inland, they had to check the enemy, and one of the scouts, he had a machete in his hand, and he's cutting through the mangrove, and all of a sudden he stops and he hears something. Papers. Can't make it out. So he cuts another 10 yards into the jungle, and he stops and he hears the voice, papers, get your Toledo papers here. He thinks he's hallucinating from malaria. He can't believe it. What the heck? And he cuts another 10 yards, stops, and there, right in front of him, there's an opening in the jungle, and there's a 10-year-old kid standing there with a fistful of newspapers in his hand, and he's waving the hand. He's saying, papers, get your Toledo papers here. Papers, get your Toledo papers here. The Marine runs up to the guy, grabs him by the shoulder, and he shakes the kid. He says, kid, what the hell are you doing here in Guadalcanal selling Toledo papers? And the kid looks up and he says, yeah, they gave me a lousy corner, didn't they?
I
You got it, kid.
like it.
I like that one.
See ya. Thank you for coming, Len. What a
Thank you.
pleasure. What a
Thank
pleasure to see you.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys. Thank you for the
Thank you
platform.
so much for joining us today. What you do is truly special. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Bottle Rocket Podcast, whatever you get your podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye, Maeve. Bye, Teabag. And thank you so much, Len. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.